Hello and welcome. I'm Uday Pratap Singh. You're joining us on NewsX. It's time for our special NewsX and Business World panels on the Indian economy. Decoding, of course, how the year really has been like and how fast the recovery will happen once again to take India back to the growth trajectory it was on before the pandemic, and what really needs to be done by government and what needs to be done by businesses themselves to become Atmanirbhar. Let me quickly introduce our panel that's joining us live this evening. We have Vikram Vadhavan, founder and CEO of Vacitum, live with us. Bharat Bevinahali, co-founder of Kutuki, is with us live. Divay Chadha, co-founder and CEO of Grow Up Group, is joining us live as well. Dilip Hublikar, head of sales, APAC. Prodivance Technologies is live with us. Dr. Anurag Batra, as always, joins the panel, chairman and editor-in-chief of Business World and Exchange for Media Group. Welcome all of you and thank you so much for being with us today. Vikram, let me begin with you first. Now, we had you on the show a few weeks, rather a few months back. Since then, have you seen a rebound or are things pretty much status quo? Also, with these waves that we are seeing of the pandemic, do you believe this will further delay the recovery or has it already started? Vikram Vadhavan, your opening comments.
Sure, thanks Uday. Good to be back and thanks for having me once again. To answer your question, there has been a significant growth since we last spoke, but in terms of the wave which you spoke about, I think that's restricted to few areas only, but larger India has almost gotten back to work. Of course, we are not yet back to the pre-pandemic times, but we've made good progress in past couple of months. So I think it's very pleasing and encouraging for all of us to see this growth. Although we are scared of pandemic rebounding in few areas, especially when we look at Delhi and few other states. But all in all, I think it's a good progress thus far.
Yeah, but with the second wave or the third wave coming again, next few days and few weeks may not augur well for the economy. It's a Diwali weekend, so maybe things are looking up temporarily. But with the quality of air deteriorating and with COVID growing, what do you think its impact on the economy will be?
When I look at Delhi per se, because that's where I stay and I have a better exposure to Delhi, I think Delhi heights are very, very brave, Forget the pollution, forget the second or the third wave of COVID. We've shown a very brave face for rest of the India as well to get back to work, to ensure that we have to get things rolling. All of us, it's not going to be only government's job. It's not going to be only one industry or two industries. I think each one of us has to be watchful and be very, very conscious about when we move out, try and make sure that our contacts and each touch points are observed finely. But at the end of the day, we all have to get back to work. And I think that's what Delhi has been doing. And although we are worried about pollution, we are worried about the third wave of COVID as well. But I think we've done a great job thus far.
Okay. I think I have a little contrarian view to you. I think the damage is being done. We are not taking cognizance of the damage. And I think we should be much more careful and need to be. And just because it's Diwali, there is exuberance. But both in terms of sales and in terms of demands of lots of products, we'll have to see beyond Diwali if it lasts. Right now is also wedding season, but I'm not sure the demand will continue post-December. And on the health front, we got to be very, very careful. I think it puts us as a risk that is at least 2-3 times than the normal risk. The air quality index is at the lowest. Vehicular pollution is back to old levels because more and more vehicles are again on the streets. Diwali vehicles have added to that pollution. So I think it's a very tough time, and over the next 1 to 2 weeks, we must be very conscious and sensitive to this. Let me go to Bharat. Bharat, you heard Vikram make his remarks. What's your view in terms of where is the economy headed, and what have you done in your business to pivot in the last 8 months?
So just to set the context, what we're building at Kutuki, our vision really is to reimagine early learning for India. So specifically, we create very India-focused content. There's no Peppa Pig for Indian kids. There's no Dora for Indian kids. So from the outset, for us, the goal has been to create something that represents Indian children, right? That reflects the culture, the values, the manner in which Indian kids learn. And so as a business, and I think for us, the pandemic hasn't really affected us much. In fact, we've seen phenomenal growth over the last few months, especially over the last 3 months. EdTech in general and content, I think, have benefited because more consumption is happening. But that doesn't mean that we take our eyes off of the big picture, right? So we're very cognizant about how our team is safe. The health and safety of our team members comes first. We see that in Bangalore. I'm in Bangalore, and we see so many people out on the streets. And I agree with you. I think it's a time to be cautious. But also, I think it's a time to be, it's cautious optimism. I think that's how I put it. Because for many
one
business,
should be optimist always. I think cautious optimism and recognizing what's happening on the ground are two different things. I'd like to disagree with both the. I understand what you're saying, that you got to keep doing what you got to keep doing, make the best, and in some time in the future things will be better. So I understand, but I think we need to be very conscious with the number of cases happening and the spread and the deaths that are happening. And if you're in Delhi, if you saw at 4:30, seemed like you were, it was 6:30 p.m. because of the smog. So clearly, I don't think you, being in Bangalore, you recognize what's happening in Delhi. Let me go to Divay. Divay, you heard Vikram and Bharat, they're very optimistic, and that's what gives us hope in this. In these times, and India has entrepreneurs that, in spite of all this, are resilient and are creating enterprises that will create jobs and that will add to the GDP, and more importantly, add to the better quality of life. Tell us what has happened in your own business over the last 8 months, and where do you see it going over the next few weeks?
Sure. So thank you so much for having me here, Dr. Anuga. So the very first thing that I would like to point here is, irrespective of the fact that we are optimistic or not, I feel it's very tough to get a week of here, right? So when I typically talk about the recovery, so even if we have a W curve, right, where you would focus on, that even if there is a dip because of people have started going out, right? So we understand that B2C products or services are going to increase, right? But eventually, the industry that will bring revenue, majority of chunk would be B2B, right? So it will take some time to get on the track. But I think with that optimistic view, where I feel that the vaccine talks are into consideration, and even if the third wave is there, but if there is a standstill opinion when it comes
the way these are general things, let's focus on your business. We know the background, these are very general things. I want to know specifics about your business and where it is headed.
Correct. So when I typically talk about lockdown and the impact of COVID here on our particular business, then we are particularly focused on gig economy and the remote working culture. Before the actual pandemic happened, we were focused on remote working, right? So I think we got a kick because of this lockdown. People are more used to remote work. They understand the tools, the productivity tools. Communication these days are not a barrier. There are n number of tools to measure KRAs and KPIs. So when we talk about remote workforce, I think it's gonna take a steep curve. So we have been lucky in that way that there was a bench for us when it comes to growth. So I think during past 3 quarters precisely, I think we have grown nearly 350%.
Okay, good. And what would you attribute this growth to? And do you see this growth continuing beyond December, beyond January? Do you think this is a growth that is sustainable, and possibly there is much more to do than 350% growth? And qualify why do you think so?
Correct. So I think I'll state that with numbers, because when the lockdown one happened, right, then a lot of us were the trust between the employer and the employee was not there, right? But with more tools coming up, with the processes set up, now people are used to remote work, right? I would say that, because there were videos all around stating the challenges people were facing when it comes to remote working. But now I think people like remote work not just because of one reason, but because we are also moving ahead and bringing women workforce into the picture, right? Which we were not addressing before, right? So if 48% of our population they are women, then why only 3.7% of people are representing the top women CXOs level or people who are actually heading those organizations? So I think when I talk about the next few quarters, the growth looks more stable because there are tools and a lot of companies, they will shoo away from the traditional offices or, the co-working spaces were a boom, right? At one point of time. But, the more they rose, their revenues came literally to negative, right? So when I talked about they were making more losses rather than profit. So I think remote work will exist not because of those overheads, office spaces that you will be, saving on, but also
convenience. We've seen that we save travel time, so on and so forth.
There are a lot more things.
Where you're good. Let me go to Dilip at this stage. Dilip,
Sure.
what are your opening comments on where the economy is headed and how do you see it doing over the next 4 months?
Good evening all. Thank you so much for having me here. Lockdown, pandemic, COVID, yes, it's affected everybody, right? It was an initial shock. So stage by stage, we got the shock, we observed it. And India, by nature is a resilient, and we've had many earlier and we've emerged out of it. So I see this as a interim stand, but yes, this pandemic effect is here to stay. And coming months are very, very positive because the new ways of working has emerged, new ways of dealing with it has emerged, and India, has been resilient to all these things to adapt as well. And I see it very, very positive in the coming months. The business picking up, it's already started showing up now. Yes, I think next 3-4 months things have to be very positive. Yeah, but the approach has to be changed. The focus has to be on consumption rather than facilitating.
How will demand come back? Are you expecting the government to spend a lot? Because unless until new jobs come back, unless until people's disposable incomes go up, because we've had loss of 30 million jobs. Also, in some cases, the income has shrunk. So where do you see the demand coming back? Theoretically, what you're seeing is good, but how do you see it happening on the ground? I know the last 1 month has been very good. The GST collections in October have been record in lots of categories. Record sales have happened, but it's because there was a pent-up demand. There is a festive season. There is a wedding season. But what beyond that?
So we saw a spike. I think this will stay for October as well. However, now that effect
in November. Dilip, you mean it will stay in November?
Yeah.
We are in November now.
November will also be good because of Diwali and a lot of sales which are coming in. And after November as well, the business have started spending. In fact, but the individual consumers are still wary. We have to make sure that the consumption has to be increased, and our efforts from the government as well as from the organization has to make sure that the consumption comes back. The reliefs, the incentives for consumption, if it comes, it will be very good, right?
Okay. Let me go to Vikram Bharat Dive again. Vikram, if I had to ask you, when do you see the economy coming back in full bloom? What kind of time frame you're looking at? Of course, it depends on when the corona recedes. It depends on when the vaccine comes. Today, Pfizer has done a trial of a vaccine which is 90% effective in the US. So clearly, there could be hope in the future. But without knowing the timelines on corona and the vaccine, what's your sense of when the economy will be back?
Dr. Bhatta, I think I'm going to put my 2 cents by Holi. We started on around
March.
March. I think by March 2021. So another 4-5 months of a difficult time for all of us. But even this difficult time has shown upward growth. If you look at the overall graph, there has been a good growth, and as we were expecting it to be a V-shaped recovery, I'm very positive about V-shaped recovery, and hopefully by March 2021, vaccine.
And why do you feel that? Why do you feel there has to be some basis to feel that
Correct.
just feeling is not going to, for our viewers, decode that. Why do you think there will be a V-shaped recovery? And in my view, it will be sectoral specific. You can't say, for example, business travel, I don't think it will come back at least in the next 2 years. That has an impact on hotels, that has an impact on airlines, that has an impact on dining out, because business entertainment is a large part of, what happens in QSRs. So tell us where does your optimism come from?
Sure, multiple reasons. Of course, what you said that it's going to be industrial, sector-wise growth. If you look at the overall economy, and as you rightly said, the business travel, largely the luxury segment is going to be the last one to revive. But rest all is going to get back to normal. The few reasons why it's going to happen, one and the very important reason is the sentiments are changing. Very, very important. If you look at in past couple of months, sentiments have become quite positive. Another reason to add to it, there are multiple vaccine candidates in the market right now. So in all possibility, we should have at least initial shots coming to our frontline workers.
That's what a lot of people say, Vikram, that the recovery, the rebound may just start from when the vaccine arrives. Do you believe that as well? Do you believe a full recovery?
It's a combination. Uday, when we look at when we try and make certain predictions, it's not only one reason because of which you're going to make certain amount of predictions. I think it's always a combination of few factors which you may want to consider before being positive or before making any kind of a prediction. So for me, I think it's a combination of and the very important part is the sentiments are very positive right now. Despite of we having third wave, despite of pollution troubling us. As Dr. Batra said, last month GST collection were pretty good. We are hoping to do that this month as well. And I'm sure December also, if you look at our business projection, our industry, especially the industry which I'm part of, recruitment, which kind of is the first one to fall sick and the first one to start feeling healthy. So we see those, trends wherein we see certain amount of upgrowth happening. So considering all those factors, I'm hopeful of getting back to somewhat normal by Holi next year.
And Vikram, looking at jobs, give us a sense of what kind of jobs continue to be still in demand, what sectors, and also tell us what has changed. What kind of jobs has gone away? How are employers looking at recruitments? Are they doing replacement recruitments, or it is low-end jobs? Because clearly costs and cost control is on every promoter, every CEO's mind. So tell us, what is the shift that has happened in recruitment?
So largely, when we look at recruitment, there is recruitment happening either at the lower of the pyramid, wherein the bulk hiring is happening, or it is happening in very, very specific areas. For example, artificial intelligence, automation, data sciences is something which has been in demand in the last 6-7 months. Or the frontline workers across industries, rather it will be retail, it's going to be technology, it's going to be outsourcing. That continued happening, and that's picking up a big growth the past couple of months. And we hope and we are positive of these trends to continue in next months as well. So to answer your question, it's a mixed bag. But when CEOs or when companies are looking to hire, the trend has changed significantly if you look at last 6, 7, 8 months, Dr. Batra. Earlier, the companies were very focused in hiring hard-skilled folks. So when I say hard-skilled, if you wanted to hire a data scientist, you're going to be only looking at how good this person is going to be in data sciences. But now companies have become more demanding. Maybe the pandemic has taught a lot more things to us. Therefore, they want equal focus on soft skills as well. They want candidates to be a big troubleshooter. They want them to be a great team player. They want them to be good leader. So it's a combination of hard skills and a soft skills, which is in demand right now, which has been a big trend shift in the last few months.
Communication and soft skills will always help.
They were always there.
And I think in a post-corona world, I think communication is even more important than it was.
It has always been important.
Working relies on the ability to communicate what you are doing. So I think it's even more important. Bharat, now EduTech has seen a deluge of startups in every segment, sub-segment. What distinguishes your startup, and why do you think you're primed to be successful in the future?
So I think the one thing that we've strived to do from the time we started is to be as close to our users as possible. And just our core USP, this is a space that has the largest preschool population in the world. And a lot of learning actually happens outside of the preschool itself. It happens at home. It happens with interactivity. It happens with content. It happens with people-to-people interaction with family and the world that you see around you, right? So our goal really has been to tap into that. And from the time we launched our product, in Jan 2019 is when we launched. And the trajectory, obviously, in the last few months has been great. A couple of things that have been really big spikes for us. One, we were one of the winners of the Atmanirbhar App Innovation Challenge. And two, the Prime Minister spoke about us in August's Mann Ki Baat, right? And apart from the awards, which were great, the recognition was great. What it did was there was such a deluge of users, right? Really from all across the country. And while we started out primarily focusing on tier 1, today over 50% of our users are tier 2 and beyond. And this last...
Real Bharat.
Real Bharat, right? So it's been very insightful for us, very humbling, in many ways, because we're learning that we've just scratched the surface. We've always felt that, but to actually see it in action, right? There's so much that we still have to learn about the real Bharat, about the needs of parents, about how children can learn more effectively. So like, for example, one of the things that we've strongly believed, right? There's no reason you cannot learn math or science in their mother tongue, and why they can't develop, become better at that, build skills in that, and why this focus on English has to be there. Sure, English is aspirational and we continue to see that, but consumption in vernacular content has been so high for us. When we launched Hindi, last year, we saw a spike in usage. Now we've launched 3 other languages, and the goal for us is to add as many major languages as possible. And we create our own content. So we have every single piece of content we create has a very clearly defined learning outcome, and that really has made the difference. But just to sort of add to what Vikram was saying, I think the reason why I am cautiously optimistic, obviously one, because of the whole situation, we are seeing a lot more adoption, and we're able to build that trust with parents. So as a business, I am very optimistic because we see that adoption continuing to grow. And even post-pandemic, once you've seen the value of a service like this, you will continue to subscribe to it, you will continue to engage with it because you're seeing your children learn. Ultimately, that's what a parent wants, right? So as long as we keep honing on that, hitting that, the hammer on the nail there, we'll continue to grow. I have no doubts about that. Just a few things that we've noticed, from a macro perspective, and this is in cities and beyond, right? Whether you're an early stage company or a big company, it's easy for us to sit here and look at what we are facing from our economic standpoint, right? We belong to a strata of society that we don't really have visibility to the blue collar workers, what they're going through. And I think a lot of the recovery actually depends on how we can help them come out of this. A lot of it will depend on how the informal economy recovers, right? So in the formal sector, obviously, we'll start seeing some sectors doing well. Like you said, business travel, unfortunately, will continue to be impacted. But I do think that we will start seeing a faster recovery in many other sectors as well. But it's important to keep the whole picture in mind.
Thank you so much. I think you're right. The adoption of anything that helps you improve and has technology as an element has gone up. The way you heard Vikram and Bharat, now remote working is going to, I call it work from anywhere. You call it remote working, I call it work from anywhere, not necessarily home. Flexi working. So flexi spaces will thrive. Give us a sense of how do you see the future 12 to 18 months from now? Right now, whatever we are doing, it is out of compulsion. When we have a choice to be able to go to office, what do you think will happen? Do you want to make a prediction on NewsX?
I think, when we talk about remote working, it's just not about work from home, right? Remote working is you work out of a cafe, a beach, anywhere, right? A remote location in mountains. Remote work means you can work out of anywhere and, just for breakthrough results, right? So what I mean to touch here is the talent economy that we are actually working on. Like, for example, if I talk about Bangalore, right? If Bangalore has 80,000 engineers in one particular segment, then for those maybe 15,000 companies, those are their only world to recruit, right? But what if at a lower price or, some maybe a candidate in Delhi or a candidate in Chennai is sitting with the same kind of skill set at a little feasible amount, right? Then why will the company not reach out, right? So when we fuse gig economy, because you understand freelancers community has boosted, right? So gig economy and talent economy, when we merge it in that way, then maybe 18 months to 24 months down the line, a lot of established companies, like you have heard, you are aware that Fortune 500 companies, maybe 20s of them have actually shut down their 20 plus offices, right? So if that is happening out of compulsion, right? But when given a chance, it's just not about office infrastructure. It's also about your processes that makes you more strong in order to make it more multi-dimensional and multi-diverse, sort of a environment in your company. So maybe 2 years down the line, I think when we talk about remote work, it won't be an option or a compulsion. It would be more of a choice.
Okay, Dilip, I'd love to know your view on how technology will be a driver beyond what it is today. I mean, technology was an enabler, let's say 8 months back. Any business that doesn't use technology in a big way possibly is under leveraged and under optimized. Give us a sense of your own view.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we just took an example of EdTech, right? Tier 2, Tier 3 we discussed. So those were never part of any technology earlier, unless few sponsored schools which had the infrastructure, right? Today, without schools, lakhs of students are outside the education hub. Now, technology is more relevant than any time. So not only on the students or the schooling per se, so is applicable for our corporates as well. In with respect to IT segment. So like what Vikram mentioned, skilling, upskilling, cross-skilling has been the mandate, and during the COVID has taught us, that's more relevant than ever. So Prodevans, in fact, we have emphasized much on this aspect, and we've been hiring, more than ever during this pandemic. Luckily for us, we've been picking up a lot of projects as well. So we've focused on that multi-skills, good communication, those have been one part of it. And we've been focusing on the freshers, fresh out of college, right? To create a pool of them, create an internship, labs for them, giving them a live projects for about 6 to 8 months, and then they're ready for absorption. So that the cost aspect is taken care, the pool is created, and the optimism is maintained. One. Second one, retention has been a challenge because of this entire aspect of it with respect to technology being, imposed more than ever. So now everybody is adopting to work from home culture, and those who are very remotely or forcefully adopting the technology, now it's been a mandate, and without technology nobody survives.
Let me quickly go back to Vikram Vadhavan. Vikram Vadhavan, what has been a lockdown learning for you? What's been a learning that you've put into practice, or something that you've picked up from these difficult past few weeks and months?
I have a very favorite saying here, Uday, which I've been using quite often during my talks and during my discussion. Right from beginning when it started, stay hopeful, remain watchful, and hope for the best to happen. And I think that's what continued all these months. Very, very important to remain positive. Even if things are not going your way the way you wanted them to go, it's extremely important to be positive. We spoke about it during a last discussion as well. That more than a physical issue, COVID has been a mental issue. So as long as mentally you are strong, mentally you're prepared to handle any situation, you're going to be a winner out of it. Another thing, which is again related to being positive and being hopeful, is remain agile. Don't just be rigid about your plans and what you want it to do. So always be flexible to change your plans. Be as flexible as you can. So remain agile and stay floated is the mantra of the time for now, and that's been the biggest learning for us.
Okay, let me take that to Bharat. Bharat, your lockdown learning. Your ventures lockdown learning, or something that you believe should be a lesson that's been picked up?
So we were just discussing remote work and just having a sidebar, right? Clearly, like Vikram said, I think the one thing that is supremely important is how you're taking care of your mental health as well during this period. It can be very hard when you're isolated. It can be very hard when there's a lot of pressures. And we obviously see the physical side of it, taking precautions physically in terms of safety, maintaining hygiene, and all of that is really important. But I think, as leaders of the organization, it's also imperative for us to make sure that everyone's in a good space mentally, and to create that environment while we are working remotely, right? So we've taken a call that we will be completely remote. And the key goal is to keep communicating with each other, right? Divya was just saying, you need to over communicate and just make sure that always is happening, right? Being very cognizant of that, I think, is very key. And as with any startups, you will have really exciting days. I think there's just two emotions, right? As a founder, it's either extreme panic or extreme euphoria, and it's seldom anything in between. So don't let your own emotions as a founder sort of come in the way, and make sure that your team is in a good space all the time. I think that is very critical. We've been looking to ramp up our hiring as well. And one of the things that I've also seen is, even beyond the big cities, right, there are so many capable candidates who have applied to some of these positions from smaller towns, places like Coimbatore, Vizag, Srikakulam. And these are really driven folks. So if we are looking at adopting remote, that is also an option that we are considering seriously. Have that flexibility when we do get back to normalcy. I would love to go back to an office. I miss the chai conversations, in the office. I'm sure everyone does. But at some time, you need to sort of pause and look at the whole situation and say, if it actually benefits the business and I'm able to generate jobs in smaller towns, give them really good roles that they otherwise would not have got. And if they're not comfortable moving to a big town, there's no reason why we shouldn't hire them.
Okay. Dilip, your lockdown lessons?
Agility, flexibility, and keeping the folks together, over communicate, like what Bharat was mentioning. That's been an essence, and we've been like one big family now at office as well. We've been talking, all across with everybody every day with regular cadences. Sometimes without agenda, sometimes with agenda. With all the pressures coming in, we just have some sessions where, just to relax them. Some, we do have kind of sessions to, just to sing, just to unwind ourselves. So those have been smaller things which we've been trying to do. But yes, there has been a kind of emotional thing, because we've not been used to working isolatedly, right? We've been working in this, chai atmosphere. Every now and then we just go have a sip of tea, get together. So that's one thing which we do miss. One, and I think HRs have the toughest job to keep the team intact and motivate them. So are the owners. That's one thing which we are trying to focus. So it's just not with the internal employees or management. It's not just that. We've been having a relationship with our customers as well. So communicating with customers in spite of their challenges, everybody is like overpacked. It's not multiple conversations which we can have in this digital world, right? Everything is scheduled and dedicated meetings. So there cannot happen in a scenario where you have 2-3 meetings at a time. So that's one thing which we're just coming out of that planning, how to get customers time and all. So, but yes, we've been able to manage, and we've been trying to hold on to customers. We've been able to win big labels, innovate the way we deliver our services, and yes, the CSAT levels exactly are important, and we've been able to manage it, and we're growing. Luckily for us, the COVID has taught us and given us a lot of opportunities to hire as well. Because because of the panic, large companies have stopped hiring, right? There has been a lot of churn, forceful churns as well as voluntary churns. So consulting company like ours have benefited a lot, because projects won't remain intact, right? Irrespective of the scenario, they have to run. So we've been hiring left, right, and center, and we continue to do so.
Okay. Divai, the same question to you on your lockdown learning, some lessons you picked up over these last few weeks and months.
So Uday, I'll borrow Vikram's point of agility there, because first thing is that a lot of irreversible changes has happened during COVID, right? So for startups and startup founders, one thing that they have been really good at is they were agile, right? So they were able to pivot even in terms of process, or even in terms of working infrastructure, or even in terms of surroundings, or even in terms of their internal teams, right? So agility is one thing that I've learned. You cannot be adamant or extremely rigid when it comes to your own thought process. The second thing that I've learned, is that probably start delegating few processes, because what I have tried differently during COVID, working remotely, is that previously a lot of companies used to set up a particular process, build a particular team, and just tell them that this is your SOPs, there are KRAs, there are KPIs, start work, right? But when you give them an insight that, okay, this is the ideal goal, eventual goal, okay, you create process. I know first time it would be a shitty process, right? But then they will get deep down inside it, and 3 months or 6 months down the line, if they will start creating processes, then the subjectivity will go, right? So I think in a longer perspective, if you will delegate the art of setting processes to your employees, it could be heads, it could be employees, I think the subjectivity of any business will eradicate to a minimal level.
Okay. As far as now the pickup is concerned, look, we're living in a new normal right now. There are ups and downs, there are peaks and new peaks and waves and new waves. But in terms of going back to pre-COVID levels, when do you see your ventures, your businesses going back to pre-COVID levels? When do you believe demand, supply, sales will be back to that, that position? Will it be, 6 months from now? Will it be 4 weeks from now? Will it be longer? And why? Divai, let's start with you.
So Uday, I think I just mentioned before that probably in COVID has been, I won't say it's a blessing for me, because they've been very subjective. But, we raised, our revenues were, good in past 3-4 quarters that I mentioned. So the new normal, it depends on what are you referring to, right? So for example, the economy of February 2020 you are referring to, or of maybe June 2019. There is a difference between both of them, right? Pre-COVID also there was a downfall in economy, right? So I think being relevant would be the only way. If companies will eventually adopt the remote first working culture, their relevance would be more, as compared to, again, the agility factor would come into the place where, no, I would wish to go to the office and that's the only way to go about it. I think the change is a little faster than it is projected, but it is there. So the next time I think you invite us, we can always get a cup of coffee or tea with us to, mutually bridge that particular gap.
Okay. Dilip, recovery 6 weeks from now, 6 months from now, 1 year from now, pre-COVID levels, when are they going to be back? Dilip, your assessment and why?
The way I see it is, it's kind of started, but definitely to reach the comfortable level, it will take about 4 to 6 months, right? But yes, there has to be a lot of, tweaking in the way we function. The policies of the organization has to be very, very flexible and employee friendly. There has to be, this emotional emotional part which is being taken care, which has to be taken care. So HRs will have larger role in that part, and the more flexible we are, more better it is for us to sustain our employees, make them more accountable, give them all the things which they need. Of course, their productivity will be more. And as far as customer sentiments are concerned, yes, they are picking up, and it's same for everybody, right? Like I speak for my organization, every organization will need to have that flexibility kind of thing. So then only, if each of our organizations grow, then the consumption by default grows. Because we are consumers to one other companies, right? That's one part of it. And the way particular segment which can grow is the automation sector will be a big buzz, and we are already seeing a lot of things which are happening around that. A lot of companies are adopting the automation part of it. The security aspect of it will be much bigger. Work from home, the remote aspects will need us to be more and more secure, because we do work on customers' data more often, whether it's an individual or a corporate. But yes, that has to be an emphasis. But 6 to 8 months has been. But the focus, what we feel is the skilling, reskilling, and upskilling. That has to be the buzz. You have to encourage your own employees as well as the customers to be enabled more, communicate more, get all the latest technologies in place, get them certified, create programs around it, incentivize that part of consumption for learning. That will help employees to be motivated, and I think that's the way things would be.
Okay, Bharat, your take. When will pre-COVID levels return?
I think personally for us, Uday, it's like Devi said, it's not really a blessing, but it's been good for us because we've seen more adoption of the product, and we're also seeing a higher willingness to allow technology to be an enabler, even in the space that we're in, which is in early learning, right? So, as a consumer-focused company, we've been absolutely doubling down on growth. We're seeing that as more accessibility is happening across the country, we do expect to see that growth continue purely from our perspective as a business. But one thing that we expect to see sort of normalize, at least I expect to see normalize, is with respect to discretionary spends. I think we'll end up seeing some kind of normalcy around May, June, not really before that. Also, I think in terms of precautions, no one really knows all the answers yet. We've learned a lot over the past 8-9 months, but there's still a lot that we don't know. We hope that the trials are successful as quickly as possible. But then the next challenge will be, how do you make vaccines available across the country? We're a massive country, right? So how do we stage that? How do we take care of our frontline workers? How do we bring that normalcy back, right? A lot of it will depend on how efficiently all of us together can actually do it. So I'd say about May, June is when we expect things to get back to some sort of normalcy, hopefully earlier than that. From our perspective as a company, we'll continue to work remotely at least for the next few months and take as many precautions as possible and bring in flexibility more than anything else. We've seen that there is absolutely no reason why you can't be remote or why you can't have that flexibility and still be as productive, still contribute. And I think the key is don't micromanage, right? From the get-go for us, the goal has been find really great people. And if you've hired great people, don't micromanage them. They will do what you expect them to do and then exceed your expectations. So that ethos will still continue to sort of hold for us as a company.
Okay, well, Vikram Vadhavan, you're with us as well. And you perhaps answered this question earlier when you had joined us a few weeks and months ago. Is the recovery coming any faster? When will pre-COVID levels return? 6 weeks, 6 months? Vikram, what's your assessment?
Yeah, so Uday, if you remember during our last discussion, I did mention that I hope things are going to get back to somewhat in a positive scenario by October, November. And I think we've been pretty much on track on that. And I have a very, very strong feeling that by March 2021, things are going to be a lot better. Even if we do not look at about 100% recovery to pre-COVID times, we should still be easily doing anywhere between 80 to 90% by that time. As Bharat mentioned, that making sure that the vaccine gets to a complicated and a large, diversified country like India is going to be a biggest challenge. But we must appreciate that our government has already made a plan and the infrastructure is already. I think the biggest challenge is going to be getting the supply of the vaccine. Transporting it, I think, is something which our government has been proactive to make an arrangement and be ready by now. I think all that has happened. We have a blessing that our country is going to be producing the maximum vaccines in the world. So we are going to get the advantage out of that as well. I think the biggest question which remains unanswered is how successful this first candidate of vaccine is going to be, and how quickly the adoption of that is going to be by the larger population. Having said that, I still remain positive that by March 2021, things are going to be a lot better off by then, largely driven by the sentiments. Vaccine or no vaccine is still going to be a question. But I think sentiments have been pretty good thus far, and I hope that continues despite of wave 3. I completely agree with Dr. Batra, and I'm sure we all are smart enough to know that we are in a pandemic and we got to be very, very careful about our movements, our touch points. So as I said, we have to remain watchful. Even if we want to be aggressive in our working, we want to go out, get things rolling, we want to get to our work, we want to ensure that things are moving in the right direction. Do everything, but you can't just ignore that we are in a pandemic, right? Which means we have to be very, very watchful about our movements, our touch points, our surroundings, wear masks, maintain social distancing. We shouldn't forget that, Uday. My 2 cents are going to be March 2021 for a larger recovery to happen. We may still be.
And do you believe it's going to be vaccine dependent? That's another question I want to pose to all of you. Do you believe it's going to be vaccine dependent or not quite, Vikram?
Somewhat yes, Uday, but
maybe
not
some sectors. Maybe some sectors.
I put my maximum weightage and gravity to sentiments, and they've played a very strong role thus far. Whether festival or the wedding season, I think we've given a very, very brave response to the pandemic in making sure that economy gets back to normal. Our October data has been pretty encouraging for all of us, whether we are startup or an SMEs or the large enterprises. I think it's largely driven by sentiments today. Of course, vaccine is going to play a lot bigger role, and whatever the vacuum would be of 5, 10, 15% by March 2021 is going to be driven by the vaccine and the success of the vaccine by then.
Okay. Well, Bharat, do you agree with that point? Is it vaccine driven, or certain sectors at least, whether recovery will be vaccine driven?
So I do think that the vaccine will play a big role, simply just in terms of ensuring good outcomes, right? But I think the key thing more than the vaccine actually is how aware everyone is. Social distance, wear a mask, and even though we see people outside, by and large, we're seeing people take precautions, right? And I think the more we do that, the faster we can recover. But obviously, I think the vaccine will help. And as we're approaching Diwali, we've seen with other festivals, the wedding season as well, right? So people have taken precautions. We've had friends and family who've had to go through all of these big celebrations, but in a very muted and small fashion. We've also seen the other side where team members and friends and family have been impacted, severely by this. So as more and more personal experiences, first degree, second degree connections who've been impacted by the pandemic, you see more of that up close and personal. I think that awareness is there that you need to be careful. Unfortunately, it's the nature of this virus that it will spread unless we're careful. So making sure that, you're personally aware of it. And if you see somebody who's not really doing what they're supposed to do, I think just make it a point to let them know very gently and politely that if they do take care, it's not something that they're doing for your benefit, but for everyone else's, as well.
All right, we leave it at that. My thanks to all of our panelists for joining us on this Business World NewsX special edition, this special panel on the Indian economy. Appreciate you and wish you all the very best for your ventures ahead.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.